there is no more corruption in Nigeria. The impacts are, the policies, are impactful right now, and the gains are here. We are being joined this morning by an impact evaluator, a public finance manager, Samuel Atiku. He joins us virtually. Thank you, Mr. Atiku, for joining us.
Thank you for having me on the program.
And of course, I'm sure you have seen that and maybe more from Nigerian's president, your president as well, saying all of those things. You're an impact evaluator, but then there is place of marketing because it's number one market and there's place of reality. What do you say to that position of Mr. President while he was in Brazil? More money, more gains, things are better for investors. Easy in, easy out, no more corruption in Nigeria.
I'll call it is aspirational, what the president has said, and it depends on how the president view impact. Again, the concept of impact is subjective. But if you go to the field of Nigeria and you pick up anybody on the street and you tell them, looking at the government, what kind of impact will you want the government to have on your life? What people will tell you, I want the price of my food item to be lower, right? In May 2023, when the president came in, headline inflation was about 22.41%. Today is still about 21.88%, so it's still within the same threshold. Nothing significant has changed. Notwithstanding the fact that the CPI weight had been rebased. Essentially, we are using 2025 price to ascertain what inflation looks like. So if you have to take it back and use the old measure, inflation seems to have even gone up. So the question is that the price of goods and services are increasing, meaning that the money you have in your pocket cannot buy what it used to buy. And so if they say, oh, the impact of my government had worked, I don't think people will feel that in their pockets. Now, on the flip side of things also, if you remember, when the president came into government in 2023, the foreign exchange rate threshold was about 463 official. 463, I know that there's a parallel market that was running for like 706 something. But he did actually float the naira. I would use the word guided float the naira, and then it dropped up all this ban and all this monetary, I'll call it foreign exchange controls that the former government had in place. Today, the naira is trading at 1,537 thereabout to $1 compared to what it was before. So if you ask an importer, what's the impact of the government, they will tell you, oh, the naira I need initially to go and import, I need more, I need 3 times of that. So they will tell you that has not worked. Mm-hmm. In terms of PMS prices, remember, we're buying PMS, I think, at 185 per liter, 185 naira per liter when government came in. Today, depending on where you are, it's averaging over 1,000 naira. And then people, if you ask people, oh, they will tell you about those costs. Those are the pains people feel. We look at electricity bill, right? 66 naira per kilowatt hour, 66 to 68, depending on the band you are. Today, people are paying 209. At some point, it peaked at 225, but it's down to 209 now. People will complain that we're paying 3 times, 4 times of what I was paying just about 3 years ago. Again, that's a big question. When you look at the lending rate, the monetary rate, the base rate in Nigeria, when the president came in, it was about 18.5%. Today, it's about 27.5%. So if you talk to that businessman that is borrowing from banks, they will tell you, oh, the cost of borrowing had increased significantly, and I'm struggling as a business person. Of course, we can talk about the minimum, which was 30,000 when the president came in. Minimum wage on paper now is 70,000 naira, right? And then you can always ask this question about whether it's been implemented. So it depends on the perception that the president is looking at things. Mm-hmm. But an impact evaluation professional that have looked at impact, I look at policies of government from the people's perspective, how your policy had improved people's life. Unfortunately, I will say that some of the reforms, no matter how good they sound on paper, until you start seeing jobs being created, until you start seeing people being lifted out of poverty, the health system getting stronger, the education system getting better, what people can relate to, until you see that happening in people's life, you can't say your policies have made impact. In the short time, yes, you've taken hard positions, but we are not sure whether those hard positions will actually translate to improvement in the life for people. So I'm sorry, I had to disagree with what the president has said. Notwithstanding the fact that it's good to market Nigeria, fantastic, but yeah, I have to disagree with that.
All right, Mr. Atiku, I'm quite clear from the statistics you just gave, from the figures, from the empirical data, you looked at various indices as an impact evaluator, and it's quite clear that the president clearly failed in all of them, all the ones you looked at. Now, for the one of minimum wage, of course, it was 30,000 naira, now 70,000 naira. But the question is, if you converted the 30,000 naira to dollars at the dollar rate then and now, and convert 70,000 naira to dollars, Nigerians will tell you that Nigerians are worse right now than they were before. So, Mr. Atiku, as an impact evaluator, where do you think this disconnect is? Because we have a president who is convinced that Nigeria is better. You know, in that report, he said a lot of things. He said, there is more money now in the economy, more money is being saved from fuel subsidy removal, but it is not getting to Nigerians. True, there is more money in the economy. The government is making more money. Oil production has increased in Nigeria. The state governments are getting more in terms of allocations. The local governments are getting more. But it is not getting down to Nigerians. It hasn't trickled down to Nigeria. So my question is, what do you think is the problem here? Where is the disconnect coming from? Is it that the president is out of touch with reality in his own country? Because he's there in Brazil. He was in Brazil telling them that, everything is fine in Nigeria. But we are in Nigeria. I'm in Nigeria, and we are seeing things on ground. So where do you think the problem is? Where exactly is this disconnect coming from? Or is the president just intentionally ignoring the plight of Nigerians?
Yeah, I think in terms of intent, we can come back to the intent question. Clearly, what you said is correct, especially when you look at the revenue that we talk about in Naira terms, that I was talking about in Naira terms, it looks like things have become bigger. But when you look at it in dollar terms, really, have we really increased much? We can ask ourselves those hard questions. Remember, some years ago, the budget of Nigeria was just barely 5 trillion per annum. We are doing now very big numbers, but in terms of how it translates to people's life, as it increased much. In fact, if you devalue it in Naira and you look at the real value of that money, you can begin to ask questions. But circling back to your question, I think at the heart of the problem in Nigeria is that we don't put people at the heart of our policy design. And I will continue to say that if you walk to a classical market very close to you and you see people there, you don't assume policies and you begin to create and craft policies without their input, without understanding the pains they are going through. So sometimes we sit on our high horses, sit in our air-conditioned office, and then we postulate theories and then look at papers and all those things, and then we join everything together and then we pass over policies. I can give you a classical example. Recently, the Federal Executive Council actually came out and said, they are banning creation of new universities. And the reason they gave is that the ones that they've established was not taking enough students. But if you look at the numbers, over 1.8 million people sit for JAM. The university system, the political system, right, can only take barely 300,000. The rest are left scrambling around, looking for where to do, and nothing happens, right? But government is making a position based on their own narrow thinking, not considering the fact that over 1.3 million people are looking to get into a university, right? But they can't get in. Instead of setting up a clearinghouse to say, okay, after this window, if you still want to get into university, there are spaces here, there are spaces here, there are spaces here, and see what happens. They make a law to say, we ban. So the way we make laws and policies in Nigeria is very prescriptive. We don't think deep and look at problems and then try to find solutions. A classical example again that you can look at the new airport they're building, they're trying to renovate in Lagos. If you look at the picture of that airport, as fantastic, as beautiful as it looks, looking at the place that cars are passing, you will see clearly that there's no pathway for pedestrians to walk. Mere looking at it, the picture of that image depletes lack of people orientation. I don't know whether they have something hidden somewhere, But for government to design something, right, that you can't see me as a person that don't have car, walk up to the airport and feel comfortable walking, it tells you that definitely I'm not at the heart of what they're designing. And that reflects on our streets. That reflects in everything we do. I mean, you see government commission a road in a village where old people should be with mobility problems, and there's no sidewalk for them to pass. There's no protection for them. So those are the problems that we have. Those are the heart of the issues we have. So once you are in government and you see me building a road, and you say, oh, because I built a road, that's the impact of my, I'll call it, that's the impact of governance, I'm doing fine. But meanwhile, the people I'm designing that road for, I've not put them in consideration when putting that on ground. Definitely for them, they've not seen impact of what you're doing. You may be seeing it, but they don't see it. And that's where the problem is.
So the leaders, Mr. Atiku, so the leaders are alienated from the sufferings of the people.
Exactly. I've been putting it clear. They clearly do not understand what Nigerians are going through, no matter how you... In fact, I, as a person, I cannot come here and tell you that I clearly understand what people in the market in Ibadan or in Osun State are going through. I'm deceiving myself. If you go to Ifon, very close to you there in Osun State, Osogbo, right? And you walk up to the farmer there, the problem they are facing there in that farm, I cannot sit down here and tell you I understand that problem. They are the ones that will tell me the problems that they are facing. Together, we can co-produce solutions to address those problems. And once you do that, you will see that those solutions are more impactful than me sitting in Abuja or somebody sitting in Osogbo and postulating theories and then divining things for them. That is the problem with Nigeria, and that is why policies and programs of government have very limited impact on the people.
Right. Now, let's talk about the audience in which Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu spoke with and spoke to. They are investors in Brazil. And some will say, would you have expected Mr. President to say otherwise? Because we're speaking to investors. Well, there's a place for marketing. You know, yeah, the reality, maybe or maybe not, is what we are seeing. But would you have expected, what we have expected him to say is the president, is the number one. He was in Brazil. Part of his itinerary was that meeting. And he was speaking to investors. Would you have said otherwise?
Now, I've sat with a lot of investors from Wall Street and all those things, and I've talked so much about Nigeria, passionately about opportunities, investment opportunities in Nigeria. One thing that we should not deceive ourselves is that anybody that is bringing his money into a country will cover virtually all the grass. It's not a marketing stuff. It's not a political. You know, in politics, you could talk to people because of utility management and you get them to actually switch side based on promise, right? But for hardcore investors, they look closely at the numbers. What you said is fantastic on paper, but they will look closely at the numbers. The question is that, have the purchasing power of your people increased? How do we measure that? That's grounded in economics. There are multiple models for measuring that. And they will look at everything. They will say, okay, if I come to your country, the purchasing power of the people is not there, so I can't sell my product. So you can't deceive people, right? You can deceive people, but investors, most times, you won't deceive them. And that is why you see some of them left the country. Some of them will come into the country even when things are tight because they can see opportunity. Even, I would call it, somebody always say that if the mountain was smooth, right, you wouldn't climb it. So the truth is this: investors look for those bumps around you to actually clop into. So yes, what the president has said as a president of Nigeria, I wouldn't expect him to go to those kind of forum and start demarketing the country. Of course not. But not be deceived by the fact that because of what he has said, people will suddenly believe that Nigeria is thinking.
Yeah, permit me to butt in here. You know, I said that because the president, you know, talked about some of the things as he has been able to do, his hardline policies, how it was painful. But now, in his words, they are blossoming in that particular video that we played. And he talked about, oh, for investors, easy in, easy out. He even talked about, he said the CBN governor is there and you can talk to him. Like, if I say I can beat my chest, all these things that I'm telling you, I can beat my chest. And to cap it all, he said there is no more corruption in Nigeria. So let me quickly take you up on that. Coming from what he has said and rounding it off, that there is no more corruption in Nigeria, is that he saying we have put measures in place? Because Goodluck Jonathan talked about stealing is not the only corruption. It's not the only form. That statement was twisted at that time, maybe for political expediency. But it was more like, let's block the loopholes of stealing so that it will not be attractive, it will not be easily accessible to people. But under the same administration, we have seen situations in which former ministers that have been alleged to have been involved in fraud have not been touched. Better Edu situation is still there. In fact, we talked about it a few days ago, and the president is saying that Yaya Bello situation is there, although he's in court, but we can still see high-ranking officials being prosecuted. More than 2 years of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration, and he's saying, investors, there is no more corruption. What do you say to that?
I mean, two things to actually pick from that statement that you just alluded to. The first one is easy in, easy out. Essentially, what it's saying is that you can bring in your capital and then you're allowed to take out your capital when you need it, right? It's about the liberal policies of I'll call it the monetary policy, the liberal policy of the government. While there are still restrictions, I think it's important to mention that what he has said there is correct in the fact that some of those restrictions that we have, for instance, you make profit, they've been whittled, that they are still there. It's not easy, but at least it's easier than what it was before he got into government. That is true, what he has said. So for an investor, I mean, vis-a-vis, if you compare what is going on in Ghana, Ghana placed on restriction. You can't take out capital, so you have to do certain things. But those things are things you will not get in Nigeria. So it's correct. But when it comes to the concept of corruption, corruption is simply not just theft. People should not misconstrue. Corruption is the abuse of your own power for private gains. Whether it's for political gains or whether it's for economic gains. It could be for emotional gain, it could be for many other factors. We've seen instances in Nigeria where power had been abused for, I mean, we could talk, I remember, we could talk about even the Senate itself. You see a lot of power abuse going on. I mean, in Abuja, for instance, the FCT, what do I call him now, minister, is notorious for abusing his power, and everybody knows that. It's not even needed. So that's corruption at the highest level, right? When you do things to act, even for political gain, it could be for economic gain. So it's not, corruption is not just tied around economic gain. And that's why there's ICPC and there's EFCC. They are two different entities, although they tend to fight the same thing. But just to tell you that within the contrast of Nigeria, there's economic crime and there's economic corruption and there's other corruption also. So just to separate it, the truth is that in Nigeria today, corruption, if you walk on the street of Nigeria, I mean, if you step out of your house in Nigeria and you walk on your feet for 40 minutes, if you don't encounter incident of corruption, a critical government official abusing his privilege, maybe blazing siren and getting people off the way, you will see it on your street. It's not there. It's not hidden. So the fact that corruption is no longer in Nigeria, I think that's a fallacy. It's just an imagination. It's there for everybody to see. But it's painful if the president is saying there's no corruption. That sends a message across to investors that, oh, this government is not even willing to to begin to take corrective measures around things that whether we like it or not, these are corruption. I mean, it's painful. We could look at, if you go to a classical ministry, you see it all over the whole place. It's not just stealing money. It's all over the whole place. If you go to an hospital, you want to get over the line, you want to jump the queue, you can use your privilege to jump over the queue. That's corruption. That should not happen.
All right, Mr. Atiku. Well, you have said it right here on this show. One of our resource persons have told me over and over again that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu never came out to say that he was fighting corruption. That why am I accusing him of doing that? He never came out to say that. And another thing, you made mention of the fact that he was addressing investors in Brazil. So these guys are smart. They are business people. They will do their own due diligence before investing in Nigeria. But are you concerned that it seems as if Mr. President was speaking more as a politician at that kind of forum? He was speaking more as a politician. You're saying everything is good, he can beat his chest, and the investors are just looking at him because they will do their own due diligence. So what exactly, fine, we know as Mr. President, he wouldn't have said otherwise, but again, what should he have done better just to encourage these investors? Because we know the reality in Nigeria. In your opinion, what policy do you think will make the greatest impact just to convince, foreigners, the international body and investors that Nigeria is truly on the right path to recovery?
I think, for me personally, I will say that I want a situation whereby I look at a classical, a typical Nigerian adult, whether male or female, or anything in between. And then I look at them, I see them that, they own their homes, meaning that they are actually grafted, right? They own their homes. They are earning enough income to live a comfortable life. They don't care about running outside of their country because there's security around them. They are not afraid that they will be kidnapped. They are eating the best food. They can walk up to their next clinic very close to them, whether it's a primary health center, anything you call it, and they receive the best care that money can buy or that society can provide. They send their children to school and they get the knowledge that can be that makes them competitive anywhere in the world. The air they breathe in is actually very healthy. Their environment is not littered with mosquito. They are not feeling any pressure from the environment. They are secure. Now, as an investor, if I see that kind of society, I'm running in. Not just to come and invest there, but to live in that kind of society. That's the society we hope for, and that is what we should be aspiring to build. The question is, how do we get there? Right. The first fundamental principle is we need to put people at the heart of our policy design. One, the kind of reform I would like to see is, one, institute a formal participatory system where citizens and government are consistently and constantly communicating. Not that you are just making presentation, you call journalists and then you make presentation and you tell them this is what I'm doing. Before you make those decisions, those debates that goes front and back happens. Everybody's input is there. How their inputs are used is also there. If they are going to be jettisoned, let it be known. Let everybody, regardless of their education status, regardless of where they come from, let them be at the heart of your policy design. The second thing we also need to do is prioritization. Let me give you a classical example.
Yeah. Nigeria, if you can do that in 30 seconds.
Yeah, I will do that. If you look closely at Nigeria today, people below the age of, between the age of 45 and 25, most of them do not own their homes. It is not even in terms of policy discourse, it's not even discussed. That shows that the biggest bulk of our working population, their interest is not even at the heart of government. We need to reverse that. We need to put people's interest at the part of our discourse. If we can do that, we begin to change our society as fast and rapid as possible.
Thank you very much. Researcher, impact evaluator, public finance manager, among other things. Public affairs analyst, Samuel Atiku. Thank you for your take this morning on the program.
Thank you for having me on the program. It's always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
With you. Of course, this will be the size of the program for today and for the week. Thank you for staying with us. It's been an amazing week, rounding it off with these, conversation about education and reward for excellence, brains in Nigeria, and of course, the impact evaluation of what Mr. President said in Brazil and the reality. Yes, there you go. You have the table in front of you. Femi Ojo is my name. Big shout out to the production team that has worked with us, and of course to Daniel and everyone as well. You can have a recap on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television NG. Drop your comments there, and of course we get to see you next week, God willing. Bye.
Absolutely. And from myself, I'm saying do have a wonderful weekend. And to the young ones, please do not give up, okay? In your drive for academic excellence, do not give up. But whatever you do during the week, this is the weekend. Go out there and learn how to play football or basketball. All right. Do have a wonderful weekend. Good morning.